Hello everyone, and welcome to another episode of Umineko no Nakakoroni. Let's just hop right in. The Ushimiya Family Conference was held just once every year. Took place on the first weekend of October. If a normal family were to use a pretentious name like Family Conference, you'd expect it to be nothing more than a reunion of rarely seen relatives who greet each other, surrounded by buckets of sushi. But in the Ushimiya family, where the sons and siblings are lent a great deal, and only those that achieve success in business are considered adults, it literally was a conference. How much of the fortune was invested? What kind of business was conducted? How much was earned? As a result, how much of the fortune borrowed from the main family could be repaid? Alternatively, how much would be borrowed for future business ventures? What lessons had they learned, and what could they learn from their mistakes? It seemed that topics like these had been discussed very seriously in the past. My dad called it a bed of nails. Apparently, it used to be a very serious family meeting where one would commonly be showered with harsh and angry voices and even get slapped in the face despite being well past the age for it. However, that was a thing of the past. By now, everyone had achieved success in their own independent business ventures, and it was on the road to becoming a normal yearly get-together. Even so, being asked by grandfather about the current state of play was extremely stress-inducing. And while to us grandchildren it was nothing more than a simple meeting, to our parents it was still a real stomachache. The absence of the man responsible for all this, whatever the reason behind it, must surely have made today's lunch even more delicious. The phrase, "when the cat's away, the mice will play," comes to mind. Let me introduce Jessica's father, whose face I haven't seen for 6 years. The man sitting to my dad's left is his older brother and the father of Jessica. Uncle... That name sure is easy to read. Krause. After so many weird names, it warps your sense of what's normal, and you start to think, hey, what's wrong with Krause? Sounds pretty cool, actually. Just like with Aunt Natsuki, I don't have many memories of speaking with Uncle Krause. He'd never been one to talk to children, and I felt like he was always talking with the adults like Aunt Natsuki. From the way my dad talked about him, it seemed he used to be a pretty spiteful and unreasonable person. If what Dad said is true, he used to be very domineering as the oldest sibling, and was hated by Auntie Ava, Auntie Rosa, and the rest of the family. Odd, considering they're all having such fun chatting together. I guess even if their relationship was bad when they were kids, sometimes when people grow up and go their separate ways, their relationship changes. That's probably what this is. After all, they all have children of about the same age. Since they share similar family environments, they probably all profit by exchanging opinions. Maybe because of that, the parent circle had been deep in conversation for a while now about the exams Jessica and I were taking. Jessica, in order to escape the discussion of exams with the old bastard sitting on her left, was purposefully facing to the right, firing off topic after topic, so as not to give him an opening. Moving on, let's look at the opposite end from Uncle Krause and the others. In the very last seat of the table, an old gentleman with a sturdy physique sat facing Kyrie. This was my first time meeting him. I had only just been introduced to him, but it seems he's grandfather's personal doctor, a man called Nanjo. And with that, I think we have the full character sheet, so I'm going to go over all the ones I haven't done so far. Ushirimiya Kinzo, the aged head of the Ushirimiya family, brimming with energy despite being pronounced to have only a short time left to live, amassed a vast fortune but has never made any announcement about his inheritance, which worries his children. Strongly influenced by the West and a rabid fan of the occult, his study is packed with mysterious grimoires. Ushirimiya Krause, Kinzo's first child, leads the family conference as the eldest of the 4 siblings. However, the other siblings suspect that he plans to claim the entire family fortune for himself, and the antagonism between him and the others grows increasingly severe. A real estate investor, he has put a vast amount of money into the development of a resort. However, his results have been harshly criticized. Ushirimiya Natsuhi, manages the household of the Ushimiya head family in place of her husband, who takes little interest. For this family conference, again, she was the one who took charge of making all the preparations and arrangements. Possesses a strong sense of responsibility and a great deal of pride. However, neither her husband nor her siblings understand her very well, so her position is far from enviable. Yeah, I think I already did that, yeah. Nanjo Terumasa. Kinzo's attending physician and longtime friend. Once ran a hospital on Nijima, but turned it over to his son and now enjoys his old age in peace. One of the very few people that Kinzo trusts now that he is held captive by an unrelenting suspicion of others. Big-hearted by nature, he has maintained a long friendship with Kinzo, unperturbed by his tendency to fly into a rage at the slightest provocation. Runaway Genji. Head servant, leading all the other servants who work for the Ushimiya family. He has served Kinzo longer than any others, and has earned his greatest trust. Since he serves Kinzo directly, Krause and Natsuki think of him as Kinzo's spy. Shannon. A young but experienced servant. She's normally calm and performs her jobs flawlessly, but she messes up when she gets nervous. Furthermore, Shannon is nothing more than a pseudonym that she uses when on duty. It's not a real name. Kanan. A young servant. Performs his duties silently and diligently, but due to his unsociable nature, he is not so highly regarded as a servant. There are several other servants with the On character and their pseudonyms. He and Shannon just happened to be the ones on duty that day. Goda Toshiro. Servant employed as a chef. While he hasn't served the family long, he has a polished talent for entertaining guests, cultivated through his previous jobs, and is highly regarded as a servant. Since he was hired by Krause and his wife, he is more trusted than those servants who have served the family longer and who are thought of as Kinzo's spies. Alright, that's everyone. Apparently, he used to own a huge clinic on the nearby Nijima Island, but he turned it over to his son and then began living a life of leisure in his old age. He's known grandfather since the very beginning when the mansion was first constructed on this island, and they have a history going back several decades. I thought he might be grandfather's companion in his suspicious hobbies, but surprisingly it seems that he's grandfather's chess partner. I see. That kind of hobby does seem very like a grandfather, with his love of Western style. You could probably also call him the only person able to enter Rokenjima, who's neither a family member nor a servant. From listening in on his conversation with the women folk seated near him, he gave the impression of a calm old gentleman. Ah yes, Hideyoshi, my favorite womanfolk. Considering he's managed to put on with our short-tempered grandfather for so long, I'm sure his big heart is nothing to laugh at. Still, even if he is his doctor, having someone from outside the Ushimiya family attending the family conference is a little odd. From that fact, I imagine that grandfather's condition has grown much worse, and it may even be one of the major topics of discussion at the family conference. George was just saying it too. For the past year, grandfather's been continually pronounced as having very little time left to live. It's awful to talk about, but grandfather's an extremely rich man. At the time of his death, his wealth will suddenly be released along with our parents' stomach acid, surely leading to some serious ulcers. With this kind of thing, the greater number of ways it must be split, the more trouble will be caused splitting it. This kind of talk would probably be included in the family conference. Oh well. It's not like it has anything to do with us children. Finally, even though he's absent, let me introduce our grandfather. The person who should be sitting in that seat of honor is Ushimiya Kinzo. It really sucks. He gave everyone else in the family these weird names, but he himself uses one which is conservative as all hell. If only his name were written the same as the characters for Golden Vault, but he let us call him Goldsmith or something. That'd be totally awesome. As you can probably gather from all the talk about him, he's a frightening person with an extremely short temper. Because I'm just his grandkid and haven't met him since I was in elementary school 6 years ago, I don't remember ever having been beat by him, but it seems our parents were raised with an iron fist. That earlier conversation between my dad and Uncle Krause, about who should go and try and convince Grandfather to come out seems oddly funny if you take this into account. In order to tell Grandfather's story, you have to take yourself all the way back to before the Showa era to recount the tale of the Ushimiya family. Until the Meiji and Taisho eras, the Ushimiya family was great and prosperous. They owned several spinning mills and were very wealthy people who merely had to fall about laughing while money rolled in. Incidentally, Grandfather, as a member of a branch family, originally had nothing to do with them. Distantly separated from the head's inheritance, he apparently had very little involvement with the head house. However, during the Great Kanto earthquake in 1923, the mansion owned by the Ushimiya main family in Odawara was flattened. The spinning mills in Tokyo were all burned down in a huge fire, and the Ushimiya family lost most of its wealth and family members in an instant. It then became a matter of who would become the heir to the main family. And as it turned out, none were left except Kinzo, who was as far removed from the main family line as they come. Kinzo himself later said it was such good luck, it was as though fate itself had been turned upside down. With that, Grandfather's ordinary life did a 180. He was entrusted with reviving the wealth of the dying Ushimiya family, which had been completely lost. Of course, just because you suddenly dump a task on someone doesn't mean they can do squat to accomplish it. I doubt the people around him were expecting much. But this is where Grandfather began to display his extraordinary talent and good luck. Grandfather used all the family funds, and everything from the hair on his head to his toenails as collateral, to borrow a massive amount of money. He created a gigantic supply of funds and immediately started a business. It was like tumbling down a hill on a bike without any brakes. Then jumping onto a neighboring bike and then another one. Just like some crazy street performance. Probably. Anyone would have thought that Grandfather had no business ability. But with an unbelievable amount of good luck and miracles, with coincidences piling up and every chance taken advantage of, before anyone knew it, he had forged powerful connections with the Allied forces. At that time, MacArthur and General Headquarters were in charge of Japan. Grandfather, in a twinkle of the eye, began succeeding in business under the protection of the occupying forces, quickly becoming very rich. At this point, it was no longer luck, but information that won the day. He must have made some seriously thick connections with the occupying forces. Grandfather knew about the emergency demands that would be made for the Korean War before they happened. More than that, he must have foreseen the special procurements and started penetrating those markets from the beginning. History textbooks say all of Japan made a large profit off the emergency demands for Korean War, but that wasn't the case in reality. Only a very limited number of the super rich played the money game and made an easy profit. Most of the citizens remained poor. In other words, Grandfather was an extremely lucky member of this group of winners. This all happened during the year 1950, I think. Since the year of the Great Kanto earthquake was 1923, that means Grandfather was able to revive the near-dead Ushimiya family to a level even higher than it had been before in the span of only 20 to 30 years. With that, you'd think he would revive the main family in Odawara. But for some reason he went and did something as crazy as buying an entire small island in the Izu archipelago. Buying an entire island is not something you can ordinarily do today. However, Grandfather was clever. He contacted the General Headquarters and applied for the establishment of a marine resource base. He acquired the island as a business property, and then reneged on it and claimed it as his own plot of land. After the war, there were prevention measures against food shortages, and furthermore, he had the sponsorship of GHQ, which meant that nobody could oppose him. It seemed Tokyo provided the land for next to no money at the time. Tokyo later made repeated complaints for the land to be returned, but not much could be done due to the involvement of GHQ, even though they'd been pushed into it. No doubt, he bribed everyone there was to bribe. In the end, the city gave up in frustration. Grandfather, with considerable skill and blessed with good luck, managed to weather the stormy seas of that period, obtaining a vast fortune of it and his own island. Of course, it wasn't all luck. He was skilled with English, and this was cultivated by his Western obsessions. It was by using that as a weapon that he was able to make inroads into GHQ. A mansion was immediately built on the island. That would be this mansion. Grandfather, who had always loved the West, made this one once uninhabited island Rokenjima, a canvas upon which he could realize his dreams to his heart's content. The western mansion that he had always imagined overflowing with emotion, the beautiful garden where various roses had been planted, and a private beach where nobody other than himself would ever be permitted to leave a footprint. To have this much would be every man's dream. After that, making good use of his huge fortune, he became a large stockholder in the extremely stable iron and steel industry, and was able to live an easy and comfortable life just using the dividends. Well, he's just that incredible. This kind of person normally gets portrayed after the fact as having an ability to foresee and predict the future or something, but Grandfather denies all that, repeatedly saying that he was simply blessed with extraordinary luck. Anyway, even a lord like that, with all his dreams made real, can't help but grow increasingly odd when locked up alone on an island. Everyone knows that he's been obsessed with the West for a long time, but none of our parents really knows when his bizarre black magic hobby began. Perhaps his love of black magic began way back when he became fascinated with the West. Or possibly, his miraculous stretch of good luck, which allowed him to revive the family, caused him to feel a mysterious power in himself. At some point, Grandfather began to make the research of black magic his life's work, filling his study with suspicious books, chemicals, and magical items as he became increasingly bizarre. These being the few remaining years of a person successful in life, those around him warmly watched over him, feeling the time that was his to spend as he pleased. Or so I hear, but knowing how that's true. They probably were just driven away, thinking that's disturbing. I don't want to get involved. Well, that war-torn period was a time for big gambles, with both opportunities and risks. I'd like to see Grandfather do so well if he'd been born in this time period. He would have had no opportunities and would have probably advanced like a chess piece from mandatory education to college at a leisurely pace, never becoming more than an average company employee. If that had happened, he'd probably be sitting here with the rest of us, regaling us with his tales of his shitty boss. No, not here, in the dining hall of a mansion. We may have been around a table at some bar. If that were the case, I'm sure this would have been a more comfortable family conference. Alright, that's enough talk about the old geezer who won't pop off. More importantly, let's talk about this incredible lunch. I was already sold by the sashimi salad. Yoda's one hell of a chef. Plus, these fish were caught in the oceans near here, weren't they? The sashimi you get at the market doesn't even come close. Quit it, Butler. Your upbringing's gonna be exposed. Everyone let out a big laugh. Damn it. You say that even though you love cheap pups. My job occasionally leads me to eat at some quite interesting places, but even compared to those, this is an excellent dish. I imagine you could have become reasonably well known in that field, Goda. I don't know much about it, but at the famous hotel where I used to work, employee politics got pretty complicated, and everyone split into factions. In the middle of all that, he was apparently forced to retire. It just so happened that Mom had job offers for a servant out at the time. As Goda cleared away the empty plates, he began to recount his own eventful past, never losing his smile. The world is a difficult place. However, it is thanks to this that I was given a chance to display my skills as a chef once more. This time for the Ushimiya family. Although I also enjoy the smiles of a larger number of people, it is also extremely entertaining to be able to perform delicate work in order to please solely the limited number of people I have pledged to serve. All of this is thanks to the opportunities given to me by Madam. Goda respectfully bowed his head towards Aunt Natsuhi. That is because among all the applicants, you were the most talented. The decision was not based on personal feelings, but purely objective. So there's nothing to thank me for. Man, why does Aunt Natsuhi have to speak so frankly? If only she spoke a bit more gently, she might give off a different impression. Shannon and Kumasawa entered the hallway with the serving cart. Please excuse us. Now then, let us move on to today's desserts. Goda and the others laid out a beautifully adorned dessert. I guess it's true when they say that you have another stomach for desserts, huh? I thought that being fed all this delicious food had totally filled me up. But as soon as I laid eyes on the dessert, my stomach started yelling more. I don't really know much about desserts, but this looked really good. A white pudding-like substance was garnished with 2 shades of red sauce, and elegant rose petals adorned the dish. When you dine on such magnificent food like this, first it is distributed in front of everybody, and then the chef takes a moment to extol the virtues of his creation. Until he's finished, as a rule, you don't touch the food. However, Maria, who had no experience with these ceremonious rules, got excited by the beautiful and delicious-looking dessert, and jumped into the fray as soon as it was placed before her. Auntie Rosa scolded her, calling it bad manners, but George responded by saying it's alright.
Ooh? This one's sour. This one's sour. Pat, the wrong one is this one. Ooh.
Maria exclaimed as she sampled the 2 colored sauces. What? There's a right one and a wrong one? Okay, I'll give it a go. Huh? Apparently the 2 sauces were one sweet and one sour. Despite it being bad manners, I also stuck my little finger in it and licked it. Huh. One of them was sour enough to make you pucker up. If it were yellow, I'd have suspected lemon, but I couldn't guess what kind of sourness it would be red. I decided to ask Shannon, who was putting away the serving cart behind us. Shannon, what kind of sauce is this sour stuff? Shannon hesitated to speak. Maybe she was just setting the table and didn't really know. She's hesitating a bit much for that, though. Did I ask something wrong? Or did they use something that we'd be better off not knowing about? While Aunt Nancy acted as though she had a headache, Kumasawa, who was sitting the other side of the table, began to laugh with a ho-ho-ho. What do you think it's made out of? Ho-ho-ho, it'll shock you. What? I don't have a clue. And Kumasawa, that laugh creeps me the hell out. What is it? Don't tell anyone, alright? Let me borrow your ears. Kumasawa leaned across the other side of the table. She asked to borrow my ears, so I leaned forward too. Their interest caught. Jessica, George, and of course Maria all put their ears closer.
Ooh. What? What? Tell me. Tell me.
The sour part is, well... Actually, it's squeezed juice from a mackerel. Mackerel? Don't be ridiculous, we all thought, horrified. Only Maria accepted it with a huh-huh.
Ooh, mackerels are sour. If you squeeze them, this comes out.
When Maria started clamoring that mackerels were sour, the adults were unable to contain their laughter.
You've got it wrong. That's vinegared mackerel.
Auntie Rosa said it to Maria in a small voice while turning red. Oh, now I remember it. Kumasawa was always this kind of character, wasn't she? I think I remember her tricking me about all kinds of things when I was young as well. Among all of them, the most painful must have been that one. That flimsy black stuff you get in Chinese food. Kikurage mushrooms. She told me it was penguin meat, and I went around school like a smartass telling everyone, didn't I? Kumasawa, you sure haven't changed. You know Mari's gonna believe you now, right? It's just a joke. Goda will now tell you what the sauce is in just a moment. Goda looked a little put out from having his masterpiece laughed at in such a strange way, but after clearing his throat once, he introduced the dessert to us. Well then, allow me to describe tonight's dessert. Based on the rose garden that everyone seemed to enjoy so much, I finished this panna cotta in a rose garden style. The rose petals scattered across were selected from that rose garden. For the sauces, I have prepared 2 different reds for you, strawberry and rose hip. Please enjoy the strawberry sweetness and the rose hip sourness in turn. Finally, the rose petals are merely decoration, so please set them aside before eating. With that said, please enjoy. Ah, man. I almost want to applaud before I even eat it. It's like when you take medicine, you know? How it seems to work better when you've read the instructions. Thanks to Goda elaborating on the details of the dessert, I feel like he's knocked it up another notch. Seriously, should you call him meticulous or just talented? The dessert was probably planned from the beginning, but he took a cue from our stopping in front of the rose garden earlier today, and displayed an incredibly timely awareness of the season by adding just a few rose petals from the garden. This combination of sweet and sour was also exquisite. If it was just sweet, you'd get used to it and become bored halfway through. But by bringing in the sour sauce at some point, you get a really vivid taste. And then, once you return to the sweet sauce, all the sourness in your mouth is replaced with an enjoyable sweetness again. I'm sure everyone else felt the same way. Every time Goda passed by one of the seats, someone praised the taste and his creation.
How is it, madam?
Splendid as always. It is a worthy treat for our guests.
I am most grateful for your words. Madam, did you know? I've heard that rosehip has the ability to cure headaches. I thought you especially would appreciate it, so I had it specially prepared.
Is that so? Thank you.
See, didn't I tell you, Natsuki? Rosehip works on headaches.
So it seems. I can only hope it has some effect.
Whoa, Goda, I love you. Later, whisper to me how much compensation you're getting for this, won't you? If you're sworn to silence, you can stick up some fingers and let me know your price. Having your talent monopolized like this on this small island is sacrilege to humanity's cooking culture. Wouldn't you be willing to display your talent to all the customers at my company? Hideyoshi, are you trying to recruit our Goda? How troubling. We'd better make some improvements to his salary or he'll get snatched away.
You really should. If you don't, he'll be lured away and you'll be stuck with 3 meals of Kumasawa-style mackerel cooking, won't you? Oh, that is indeed harsh. It seems someone's still holding a grudge. Ha 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 ha. Everyone let out a huge laugh. According to Jessica, Kumasawa's mackerel jokes were a type of running gag, and our parents had long since gotten used to them. Kumasawa often claimed that mackerel contained precious nutrients that could do things such as prevent aging and make people smarter. It seemed while it could stop the outward signs of aging, it helped prevent aging on the inside. Since she was still healthy enough to tell these kinds of jokes at her age, that benefit must be a real thing. Well then, if you'll excuse me, prepare yourself for tonight's dinner. I'll be cooking plenty of mackerel dishes for you to eat, so look forward to it.
We sure will. I want to treat myself to some vinegared mackerel tonight.
That sounds wonderful. I wonder if any delicious Japanese sake will be included. Oh, it certainly will. How about some of our famous Rokenjima mackerel liquor? Ha 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 ha. Kumasawa, together with Shannon, bowed and pushed the serving cart away. Amusingly, Goda, who looked as though his stock had been stolen from him, explained very seriously that tonight's dinner would actually be calf steak. Kumasawa-san, thank you for doing that back there. As she pushed the serving cart, Shannon bowed her head very deeply. Oh, I haven't done anything that requires thanking. Kumasawa played dumb, but it was no accident that she had thrown Shannon a lifeline. Back when Battler asked for details of the dessert, Shannon had unfortunately hesitated. There may have been several ways to dodge the question, but all of them should have been delivered deftly. Shannon, who hesitated when hard pressed for a response, was always suffering because of this small weakness. If only Shannon, like Goda, had a little of the craftiness needed to skillfully shake off a mistake, her days would be a little more comfortable. This weakness was especially unfortunate considering how flawlessly she could handle her work. Of course, there were those who well understood Shannon's meek nature and her inability to remember to gloss over her mistakes, which is why Kumasawa came to her aid without hesitation. I just heard from Genji that there's been a change to the afternoon shifts. I believe you were given a break until evening. Oh, I am jealous. What? I'm sorry. I haven't checked the list of shifts yet. Oh yes, I was thinking I might start cooking some mackerel in the oven. If you don't mind, I would be happy if you could help out a bit before your break. Yes, I'd be delighted.
To Shannon, Kumasawa was like a mother among the servants. The dining hall needed to be cleaned up, so we were chased out. Instead, tea would be served in the parlor. It seemed that they would be preparing black tea that Auntie Rosa had bought for Aunt Nazi. Mari insisted that she wanted to drink black tea, but was rejected by the old bastard who told her and the rest of us kids to play outside. Butler, why don't we all go for a walk outside?
Go look at the roses or something. But keep a close eye on the weather. The sky's still clear, but the weather report keeps talking about rain.
Ooh, I want the beach, the beach! Oh, isn't that a wonderful idea? Playing on a sandy beach isn't something that you get to do often, is it?
I guess not. Alright, let's all go to the sandy beach then.
Ooh, let's go, let's go! Maria, be careful not to get your clothes wet. Your shoes too. Ooh, it won't get wet. So obedient and cute. Battler, make sure you keep an eye out for Mario, okay?
Sure thing. Leave it to me. Oh, you're pretty cute and obedient too when Kiri asks you something, huh? Why don't you try listening to me obediently for a change?
Hell no. Come on, let's go everyone. The children flew out of the parlor. They were replaced by Genji, who pushed a serving cart and prepared the black tea. The parlor was filled with a sublime aroma which entertained everyone while they waited to appease their thirst.
Rudolph, you and your family seem to be getting along well with one another. Good for you. Oh, please, you have us beaten on that front.
So true. Jessica really has grown into an innocent little thing, hasn't she? It's all the fruit of your training, isn't it, Nazi Nason? Thank you. Nazi answered coldly. With that, the conversation halted, and the parlor became silent. Possibly because he couldn't stand it anymore, Hideyoshi broke the silence while performing an exaggerated gesture.
Still, they sure do grow fast. I thought they'd be kids forever, but they began huge right before my eyes, and before I knew it, they joined the ranks of us adults. Battler, for one, is beyond recognition.
His body's gotten bigger, but he's still a child. Well, my husband's still a child as well. I wonder where the border between child and adult is. I still don't feel as though I've grown up.
Isn't that pitiful? That's not something the mother of a child should be saying.
That's right. We're not children anymore. We're all adults. So I would like it if we could all hold an intellectual discussion without becoming emotional. When Ava smiled with sharp sarcasm, everything seemed to get more tense. It felt like the smell of the tea that had been prepared so carefully just flew out of the window.
We have always strived to hold intellectual discussions. Your sarcasm is ill-placed sometimes. You never changed in that respect.
Always strived, is it? My. I wish I could wrap those words up and send them to this room a few decades ago. Right, Rosa? Rosa smiled with a vague expression. Whether she agreed or disagreed, she knew that she would earn the displeasure of either brother or sister. It was a bit of worldly wisdom that she needed to learn as the youngest sibling.
Quit it, Aniki. We should enter into the main topic while the brats aren't around, right? Let us make that our intellectual discussion.
As Rudolph glanced over the faces of all present, some let out a slight sigh and some let out a small look of resignation. This was the unavoidable true agenda.
Last year, his life expectancy was estimated at about 3 months, which means he's already at -9. The Grim Reaper could come flying through the window in a blind panic at any moment.
The family head is still in good health. Raising such an inappropriate topic while the sun is still bright. I must question whether you are in your right mind, Rudolph.
Still, Nazi, If we don't discuss this until something happens, it'll be too late. He's still healthy now, so we gotta figure out something while we still have some time left over. It's kind of financial etiquette.
It seems as though everyone is concerned about father. Dr. Nanjo, could we hear the details from you? It seems as though they are also hoping for that. Nanjo, standing by the window and staring out of the rose garden, let out a single cough when he realized he was being called. Dr. Nanjo, how's father's condition?
Well, first, my estimate last year that he had only 3 months left to live appears to be making its presence felt, so allow me to start by correcting it.
No need to explain. Your sane measure in remaining life is only a prediction, not a promise, right?
That's correct. Because of that, I can offer no definitive answer to the question you all so often ask of when he will pass away. A human's life is supported by their body and mind. If the body is weak, the situation becomes more dangerous, but if the mind is strong enough to compensate for that weakness, it is possible to maintain a state of remission.
So you're saying even if his body's weak, his mind is still firm and spirited?
Kyrie, I'm sorry, but stay quiet for a while.
I'm sorry.
That's correct. Kenzo's body has been ravaged by disease. With him continuing to partake of that kind of strong liquor on top of it, I really must think.
So booze is the reason he's teetering right on the edge? And booze is the reason he's hanging on? Sounds like Dad, that heavy drinker. Well then, Doctor, I know you can't give anything more than a prediction, but what do you think about Father's chances of living until this day next year? That is quite the rude question to ask about the head. Nazi jumped on Ava, unable to hide her astonished expression. In response, Ava turned a defiant look, but Hideyoshi noticed and tried to smooth things over with a forced smile.
Nazi, please forgive her. Ava, try and choose your words a bit more carefully, alright?
I'm sorry. I was just so concerned over Father's condition. Is that so? I had not realized.
Dr. Nanjo, please tell us, for the sake of the beautiful family love of the daughter worried about her father's lifespan.
Krause laughed sarcastically, and Ava, smiling sweetly, returned an identical chuckle.
You ask whether he will still be healthy next year, but it's a difficult question for me as a doctor. While I do think this remission will last for a while yet, if he suffers some kind of fit, there may be nothing we can do. After all, Rokunshima is a solitary island. It's not as though an ambulance can come rushing in and save him. Normally, I would want to have him hospitalized in a large hospital on the mainland, but Father stated he does not want his noble research interrupted. It seems he holds a grudge over the way we tried to force him out last year. Apparently, he strongly suspects he will be shut away in a hospital if he goes outside. And that's how things are now.
Has Dr. Nanjo been examining him?
Father trusts Dr. Nanjo. It seems he can be examined when in a good mood. I can explain his condition, but if I try to recommend medicine or hospitalization, he refuses to listen. I've really only been able to look. It's true there are people who hate doctors. Still, what a hassle.
Nanjo sighed deeply. The purpose of an examination was to determine what medical treatment was appropriate. Receiving an examination and then not following the advice given made the whole thing pointless.
Well then, in summary, his expected life is still 3 months, and there's no way to guess how long he'll continue to live while still on the verge of death.
Rudolph, could you be a bit more discreet with your words?
I'm sorry. I've always talked like this. Give me a break.
I understand Dr. Nanjo's opinion. What do you think, Krausny?
To be perfectly honest, I have to disagree with Dr. Nanjo. I find it truly difficult to think of Father as a person so sick. He has only 3 months left to live. His yells is as healthy as ever, and I get the chills at the thought of his fists raining down on me. Pushing the task of caring for Dad solely to the shoulders of the eldest son is far from fair. and the next world be born after me. Alright. Let's return to our discussion. In that case, according to the impartial and neutral doctor's opinion, it wouldn't be odd for him to go any time. Sorry, Anarchy, but I'd rather trust the opinion of a specialist. With that, I believe the discussion of Dad's fortune is no longer a premature topic.
Father's personal funds probably reaching the tens of billions of yen, right? But it's not as though all that's neatly gathered and ready in cash. It's not as simple as neatly cutting a birthday cake with a knife.
Interesting metaphor, Anarchy. That's right, sometimes strawberries or chocolates are placed on top of the cake, making it hard to cleanly divide it into equal parts. Taking that into consideration, I think it's important for us to discuss how best to stick the knife in, don't you?
I truly don't understand you all. Even while the head is still alive, you're discussing the matter in loud voices, as though he were already dead. Come now, don't you see how important this is? After all, when the time comes, the inheritance of his fortune must be carried out immediately, right? Moreover, the wealth of the glorious Ushimiya house is vast. Don't you understand that a careful discussion is necessary beforehand? There's a huge difference between the assets of this family and your old one. How rude! The family I was born into has nothing to do with this! As Nazi resentfully responded in a low voice, the already dark atmosphere grew even more hostile.
Give it a rest, Ava. Nazi, please forgive us. Pardon her rudeness.
Hideyoshi tried to smooth things over by glancing at both with a forced smile, but it only resulted in making the hostility between Ava and Natsuhi more intense.
It seems I will just be in the way if I stay any longer. Please excuse me.
Nanjo rose from his seat and exited the parlor. This may well have been a normal act of courtesy expected of an outsider, but even so, his back was watched by several glances envious of his ability to escape. After the doctor had exited and his footsteps had disappeared into the distance, Krause recrossed his legs.
So let me see if I understand your point of view correctly. Father's remaining life is short. You want to quickly enter into a practical conference concerning the distribution of the inheritance. Why are you so eager, I wonder? Certainly, as you say, estimating and distributing the Ushimiya family wealth is no simple task. In that case, should we not carefully and deliberately calculate? It seems to me that you are all impatient to split the cake tonight. That's true, is it not, Rosa? Is something making you impatient?
It's not that we're impatient, but a decision between siblings is essential. It doesn't matter when, but if Father's condition is worsening and the day is drawing near, discussing the matter beforehand isn't what I would call impatience. Rosa sneaked a glance at Ava and Rudolph, as the youngest daughter in the family being cross-examined by the eldest was harsh.
Oh, is that your true opinion? I didn't expect that the most honest and pure-hearted of the siblings would say something like that. I wonder if those two told you to say it. Quit it, Anarchy. Rosa's a sibling like the rest of us. She has a fair right to Dad's inheritance. It's obvious she would be interested, right? After all, Dad will definitely die, and that's not something that'll happen in the distant future. On the contrary, Anarchy, you're far too relaxed. It seems almost as though you would rather do nothing than turn the discussion away from the distribution of the inheritance.
What do you mean by that? Are you trying to accuse my husband of something?
Calm down, Nazi. Listen to what we have to say.
Nissan, I hear these are very good times nowadays. That's right. Since last year, the yen has been going up and up thanks to the unprecedented boom and prosperity. Seems that it's no longer a dream that the dollar will reach 100 yen. Also, the ruling party says it will establish a health resort maintenance law by the next year. At this moment, resort development companies across Japan are running about trying to gather as much capital as they can.
You know your stuff. Soon, Japan will see an unprecedented boom. Just like when Father revived the Ushimiya family, another case like the Korean War demands. The people of Japan have worked at a frenzied pace, realizing vast economic growth and become the most prosperous people in the world. they are enjoying the height of prosperity. Private spending has increased, and institutions that can profit from that can make easy money in this era. The people's needs are no longer merely the essential 3 electrical appliances. Places to ski, golf, public pools, resort hotels, and theme parks. Have you gone to Disneyland, which opened just a few years ago? What an excellent theme park that is. In that place, even an adult can be a kid and have fun with his family. The old era, where the only virtue was to selflessly devote yourself to the country while failing to consider your family's ending. Now, as the most prosperous people in the world, we can finally accept that. Krause, your foresight is something else. When I heard this several years ago, I thought it was ridiculous. But see, when I heard about the G5 Nation Plaza Accord, that changed. The yen's getting stronger and stronger, and the price of land will skyrocket soon, I bet. The day Japan becomes the economic center of the world is not far off. You have a very forward-looking view. There's no mistaking that, at least. I feel the same as Hideyoshi Nissan. Aniki, you can read into the next decade of history. That keen sense surely came from Dad. It's incredible. However, unlike Dad, there have been cases where the timing of your prediction has been mistaken, hasn't there?
Nissan, believing that Japan will definitely face an economic boom, you've been launching resort projects everywhere, and almost all of them continue to fail. While I'm sure the era you're predicting is arriving, it seems you misread the timing of that boom. You were too early. And then you hurriedly tried to sell everything off, and as a result, the wound opened even further. If your nose was really so reliable, and you predicted the coming of a boom, there should be no reason for you to sell off property. Isn't this the proof you don't trust your own ability? How rude! Are you trying to insult my husband? Natsu's forehead creased as she rose from the sofa. Ava, paying this no heed, stared at Krause with a confident smile. Krause, who also maintained his confident appearance, told Natsu to sit down. Please stop, Natsu. My little sister is incapable of speaking any other way and has always been. Calm yourself a little. Your headache will grow worse. Proof that you have no talents right here. After all, Nissan, weren't you all excited about turning this island into a resort? Building a wonderful resort hotel, beautifully maintaining the garden. I'm just an amateur and don't pretend to understand, but you must have used a significant amount of money, right? What are you trying to say? My husband's business has nothing to do with you. Actually, that's not true, Nissan. Rokonjima's not Aniki's. It's Dad's. The hotel was constructed as Aniki's, of course. If you like, you can charge us lodging fees tonight. Right, Rosa? Well, if what I have on hand will suffice. If I can make it into a resort, this island's financial worth will rise. It is true that expenses have piled up, but we can hope to have a large harvest in the future. It is true that when that happens, it should prove to be beneficial to you all as well. I understand that. If the value of the island rises, that will increase our shares when we distribute the inheritance. Of course, we won't ask you to physically divide the island and the mansion into 4 equal parts. I'm quite happy to settle this with whatever you calculate its financial worth to be. If you understand that much, what about my business makes you so dissatisfied? We aren't dissatisfied, we're uneasy. In the first place, Aniki, when do you plan to open the hotel? Keep this up and every square inch will be covered in our grubby handprints. That's right. It's an important tool for your business, right? I understand that you can't keep it locked up until the moment you open it for business. Buildings go bad if you don't use them and air them out every once in a while. Even so, it's a bit extravagant for a guest house that we only use once a year. Wouldn't you say, Rosa? That's right. If it's that wonderful, I'm sure it'll become quite popular once you open it. Oh.
The hotel you mentioned earlier was referring to the guest house, I see.
Hell of a building, isn't it? Just as Rosa said, I'm sure it would become popular if you were to open it.
The lodging they had been guided to had not been constructed with the intent of building a guest house. It was originally constructed as a resort hotel. However, even though it had been completed 2 years ago, there was absolutely no schedule for it to be opened. Nissan, it's just like all your enterprises. Your attention and planning are both fabulous. Then it always becomes unable to maintain itself part way and ends up without being able to collect any profit.
It was brilliant of you to spot it was a waste to use the island only as a place to live. I think turning it into a resort, which could use things like marine sports, fishing, or honeymoons to attract customers was a pretty good plan. If I were the oldest son, I'm sure I too would have racked my brains over how to make a profit off this island.
But 2 full years have passed since you finished building it, right? After 2 years, you still don't know when you'll be able to open it? Where's the managing company you entrusted it to? Impertinence! This is not my husband's fault. There's been some trouble with the company that my husband contracted with. No matter how you look at it, we are victims here.
That's the thing, though. This company that Kraus Nissan had. I haven't heard many good rumors about it, you know?
Let's not beat around the bush. The project disintegrated midway due to non-payment, embezzlement, and other troubles. Did you think the troubles wouldn't reach our ears? I've been collecting evidence. I don't know what kind of evidence you found, but it's baseless. As new members in the sightseeing business, it is necessary to lay groundwork with various people. It is also important to discuss how trustworthy the other party is. This is nothing more than taking some time to meet that end.
I will accept that in my rashness the hotel was completed too early. However, we are not paying maintenance costs. It is a slow and vital strategic arrangement. I bet. More like you want to sell it, but you can't. There's no reason for anyone to buy such an extravagant hotel on an isolated island with nothing on it, and no established sightseeing routes. Besides, what's happening with the loans you gathered from this project? Might not be costing you maintenance, but the amount of money you can't return is going to go up and up. Sorry, Kraus Nissan. I investigated the development plan for the island a little. Gotta be honest, I haven't heard anything good either. Hideyoshi, I'm sure that only looking at the current financial condition could lead you to that impression. However, that is a prior investment. I have no choice but to admit that my prediction was mistaken and that up until now, several liabilities have been created. However, the times have finally caught up with me. I will soon regain everything that I've lost up till this point. Actually, all the investments I have made until now will finally return to my position. That's right. Just like throwing away a small fry, which then becomes a salmon, they will come back even bigger than before. Sure, I'm with you on that. Starting soon, the resort business will probably see an unprecedented boom. Though who knows whether it will be enough to bury all your liabilities. But I gotta ask, Kraus Nissan, after all the crushing defeats you've suffered so far, who in the world supplied you with those funds? That's a heck of a sum we're talking about. Enough to cover your massive debt, right? What are you trying to say, Hideyoshi? Oh, Nazi, please don't get mad. We done our research, see? We looked into it, trying to see who could have loaned Kraus Nissan, who's lost all his battles thus far, enough to support his recent, massively gutsy investments. The result? No one. There is no backer. The iron rule of money roulette is to bet against the unfortunate. And Anarchy, you are a well-known unfortunate in this neighborhood. Surely this era seems to welcome an economic boom, but when we asked who, with respect to Anarchy's failures, would find him worthy of funding, there was no one. So you see, where did you raise that money from? That's what we started to question next. Oh, isn't this an interesting story? And? Dear, how long do you plan to ignore these abusive remarks? Sit down, Nazi. Let me be blunt. Anarchy, you have been diverting Dad's private funds for your own business. There's almost no doubt. If we made some mistake, please feel free to explain to us. Rudolph, this isn't diverting funds. This is embezzlement, isn't it?
It's a genuine crime that can be criminally prosecuted. This is rudeness in the extreme. How can you even face the successor to the Ushimiya head house and level these wild accusations? They aren't wild, they're right on the money, aren't they? He wants to make his business succeed so that he can recover his losses, but his debt's actually growing. All he wants is to get himself out of the hole he's dug by making an even bigger gamble than before. If he had funds close at hand, it's only logical he'd try to use them. Let me say clearly, Nisa, what you are doing is embezzlement. You're betraying your father. Our father. I imagine that we'll leave you to the mercy of the courts after this is all over. Do you think those people will kindly agree to address you as successor of the Ushimiya head house? Of all the things, saying he's betraying the head is not something I can overlook. You no longer have the right to darken the doors of this glorious Ushimiya house. Leave this place at once. Go. Get out. Nazi, who had already reached her limits of anger, shouted at Ava in rage. She then pointed alternately at Ava and the hallway, indicating she should leave. Ava took out a folding fan and fanned herself with it, glaring maliciously at Nazi, as though silently daring her to repeat what she just said. However, her mouth was still smiling, curved in the shape of a crescent moon. In that unpleasant silence, Rosie gulped. Hey, Nazi Hine-san. Who do you think you're speaking to? I'm speaking to the extremely impolite sister of my husband. As the person in charge of family affairs, I cannot overlook any more of this. In charge of family affairs? Shut up, you sorry excuse for a wife. Ava folded the fan with a snap and rose powerfully. Compared to the elegance and playful behavior she'd shown until now, she was unimaginably aggressive. How foolish. You leave. You would tell me, Ushimiya Ava. Me, Ava, the third ranked in the Ushimiya family hierarchy, granted the left shoulder of the head to leave? Learn your place, and then look in the mirror at your shabby figure. Where on your clothing is the wing? Where are you permitted to wear the one-winged eagle? Your only purpose was to birth a successor of the Ushimiya family. Know your place, bitch! While Ava's face grimaced unattractively, her words pierced Nazi's heart like claws and painfully twisted in. There were 100 ways Nazi wanted to respond. However, her anger and sorrow crushed her throat, and not one of them managed to make it to her mouth. The anger, which had lost any place to go, became a single hot tear, which slowly dripped down. What? If you have something to say, please say it now. Come on. Ava faced her with a provocative gaze. However, Nazi's fist was shaking. She trembled all over, unable to do anything. Kraus quietly broke that powder cake tension. Nazi, leave your seat. You should cool your head. Nazi, resenting the fact her husband had not come to her aid, shifted the focus of her attack. Don't you understand what they're saying about you? These people are baselessly calling you a traitor to father. We protect the glory of the Ushimiya family. We put forth daily effort, day in, day out, striving to be paragons of nobility in order to take over the glory from father. And this inexcusable rambling tramples it all underfoot. And you, why don't you talk back to them? I'm talking back because you won't, but you've just been relying on me completely. And now you're telling me to go and cool my head. It's always me. I'm always thinking so seriously about this family's affairs, and you've just taken that and... Nazi could no longer hide her tears. She flew from the room in that state. After all that remained was a somewhat embarrassed mood about the parlor. When the sound of footsteps grew distant and silence returned, Kraus shrugged his shoulders slightly. I apologize for my wife. She's always been bad at controlling her emotions. I too have a hard time with her. If you got something like that running things, you must be on the edge constantly as well. Madam! It's nothing. Leave me be. Nazi flew into her room and bent over the bed wailing. Those heart-wrenching sobs reached Kumasawa in the hallway.
How heart-rending, Madame Notsuhi. There is deep enmity between her and Eva. Explaining their relationship is very draining for a woman such as myself. The Ushimiya family holds its bloodline in high regard, but if a daughter marries into another family, they would normally be removed from the family hierarchy. Under normal circumstances, Eva should have been removed when she married Hideyoshi. However, and this was not anyone's fault, Madame definitely bore no guilt. There's no way to say it other than calling it a whim of God. Kraus and Notsi were not blessed with children for some time. Of course, that was the patriarchal Ushimiya family. A wife is just a tool to create an heir. If that wife could not fulfill her only duty, she would not be treated as human. It is painful to remember how much the master tortured Madame during that time. During that time, Eva and Hideyoshi's wedding was discussed. Eva was sly. Taking advantage of Madame's inability to become pregnant, she gained the favor of the master. She inspired him to allow her to marry and give birth to a successor herself, making sure to avoid transferring her name out of the Ushimiya register. There was a vast difference in the Ushimiya hierarchy between Madame, who was married into the family and was treated as an outsider, and Eva, who was related to the family by blood and whose husband took on the Ushimiya name. Beyond that, Eva was the first to give birth, and what's more, to a boy. Perhaps you can now understand how much weaker Madame's position was compared to Eva's. I am sure Madame is tormented by the thought that if only she'd gotten pregnant earlier, the master wouldn't have accepted Eva's request to keep her last name after marriage, and Eva wouldn't have been permitted to act as arrogantly as she did today. However, that was not Madame's fault. All the blame lies with God's whims, and the stork that delivered Jessica-san late. Even so, Madame won't allow herself to see things this way. She probably can't help but cry bitter tears at her inability to carry out the duties expected of a wife. How heartrending. I cannot do anything but watch over her from the shadows.
Alrighty. So we got a little bit of the family drama. Next time we will read the epitaph of the portrait. Alright. Thank you all for joining me. And I will see you all next time.